So, welcome to another edition of the Saturday Night Horror Movie Club as we continue to practice safe social distancing. As always, I'm Kevin Lucia.
C.W. Breyer.
Tom McDonough.
How you guys doing? How have you been surviving in your social distancing life? What have you been up to? How have you been staying sane?
Go ahead, Chuck.
All right, it's not so bad. I actually don't mind working from home. I am work from home and doing like 6 or 7 miles a day on the treadmill while working on the laptop. So I don't mind. I hate not being able to go out, but working from home is okay with me.
I think working on a laptop while running on a treadmill.
Yeah, I'll run two
Some
miles an
people
hour.
can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
That'd be
I am trying my hand at some gardening, actually. Not as much as Kevin, but in pots. We started with a little herb garden, little parsley, basil, chives. I also planted some tomatoes, zucchini, some peppers. I just want to see if it works out. But yesterday it snowed and it got really windy, knocked a couple of plants over. So let's hope I saved enough of them.
Did you buy plants? So you're growing them from plants, not from seeds?
No, I am growing them from the seeds.
Oh, okay. Are you? So what's that?
Hardcore.
Well, that's what I'm doing too. I've got all of our seeds down here in the basement, and I've got a grow light, and I got a heater, and just trying to, and when it's nice out up there on a tray, I'll carry them outside when it's nice. And I got
What else is that grow light for?
Yeah, hey, I bought it at Walmart, so I got all the usual. There's other stuff that I won't put until later, like zucchini and whatnot. So, what I've been doing.
Well.
What's that?
Go ahead. I said we started our seeds as well.
Yep. So what I've been doing is my crafty side has been on overdrive. So I probably will actually do a supplemental video for the Into the Abyss this week. Which, by the way, we are now up to 97 subscribers. So our route to YouTube domination is on track. I've added a whole bunch of things in here. I mean, obviously, I'm teaching from home just like Tom is, but this last week was spring break for us. So I'm like, well, what do I do? So I finally have a brag shelf. Most authors have a brag shelf where they put all their books. I've never done that. I've hid them in a corner somewheres. But I now finally have a brag shelf up on the wall, and I've hung things up. So I'll probably do a supplemental video later on this week.
You know what you have to do? Everyone else is giving digital online tours. I did the tour of the Winchester Mansion. You got to do that. You got to do a full tour.
The tour of the horror cave. There you go.
Yep.
All right. So shall we talk about our libations this evening?
Sure. Who likes to go first? I'll go first.
I'll go first. All right, Tom, you go first.
There you go. Now, I went to Park Manor Plaza in Endwell on Hooper Road, and I got some The Kraken Black Spice Rum,
Ooh.
94 proof.
Whoa!
By itself.
So Tom will
usually
be
kicking-
a gibbering fool by the end of the night.
Oh, I just thought Kevin decided to leave since I was talking.
No, I was
But
going
I'm
to
telling you,
going to get my libations.
Okay.
All right, so
of course, Coca-Cola.
I'm rocking the local brands today. I was out and about. Actually, I was at Whitney Point Spirits, and they had a whole nice selection at 607. They had the cinna something, like a cinnamon one. They had the blood orange, and they had jalapeno and ginger. And I have a nice little drink right now that is jalapeno and ginger, a sweet and sour lime mix with a lime, with several jalapenos grown in my own garden and pickled, and a splash of ginger ale. And it's quite tasty. I almost want to throw a couple more jalapenos in there because I'd almost like a little bit more of a jalapeno kick. But I also will be, at some point, I'll need separate glasses for this. I will be, again, rocking the Screwball, and I bought Hershey's chocolate syrup this time. And I'm just going to mix that right in there, baby, and go for the full-on alcoholic Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. So what do you got there, Chuck?
All right, well, Not there yet, but I've got some blackcurrant wine. I stopped at a Polish restaurant while things were shut down and try to support local businesses. So I grabbed some Polish blackcurrant wine. But what I'm actually starting with tonight is I picked up some Jack Daniel's Tennessee Fire, which is basically what you drink after you graduate from college and stop drinking Aftershock. And yeah, no, it's actually really good. I really like it a lot. I found a recipe for cinnamon toast crunch cocktail, and so it's 3 parts rum chata, 1 part caramel whiskey, and 1 part of the Tennessee Fire. And I even went all out, put some cinnamon sugar in the glass. So
when
yeah, that stuff you got, that blackcurrant brandy, isn't that Yasnoka? Matt Jablonowski's favorite drink.
I do have that. That's not for this. This is actually blackcurrant wine. But I have the blackcurrant. Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And in a rooster glass, no less. That's awesome. So
yeah.
It's a rooster snifter.
When you guys are when this madness is over and we're back in the horror cave around holiday time next year, I will make you my own homemade eggnog. So I made homemade eggnog this year. Like I literally made it and cooked it and the whole deal. And you make that egg, because the store-bought stuff was like, it was gross. It made me feel like really bloated. But I made the homemade stuff with Fireball whiskey. Oh,
jeez.
It was really good.
It's like just Fireball whiskey with an egg cracked into it.
No, this is good, man. It's got heavy cream. It's got the milk. It's got the egg. You got to cook the eggs. You got to add cinnamon, and because it's a cinnamony recipe, the Fireball whiskey mixes in perfectly. So.
Kevin's next project is a moonshine still in his backyard.
So it's funny you should mention that. Abby sent me a link.
You also need to learn to play the banjo. You gotta learn to play the banjo too.
Abby sent me a link
furry mouth.
for how to make your own moonshine. It was a recipe for making grape moonshine. So the recipe required, I can't remember what it was now, but it was essentially Everclear, which apparently Everclear, like, you don't ever drink straight. Everclear is 190 proof. So Everclear you only use to make other drinks. So it was Everclear, I think some Sprite, and then a cup full of grape Jolly Ranchers. And you're supposed to put it...
Yeah, you do know we have some younger people watching this.
No. This YouTube channel is marked not for kids. So, just for any legalities, this YouTube channel is marked not for kids. So, there are no kid advertisements. So, and I guess you let it sit until the Jolly Ranchers just dissolve in the Everclear, and it's great moonshine. So, it's funny that you mentioned that. Yeah, so, all right. So, do we want to just get straight to the Wheel of Fate?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do that. All right.
And what we're doing.
Okay, what's that? Yeah, so here's what?
Go ahead.
Okay,
I'll
so
do it. The theme we're looking at, one of us, man.
Tom, go.
The theme we're looking at is 1970s horror. Some real classic stuff, some really out there stuff. Kevin has all the choices there, so Kevin, why don't you give us those?
Sure. So the first one we're looking at is Tourist Trap, and I am actually really interested in seeing Tourist Trap because I looked at it briefly. Long story short, the very first horror memory I have is being at my aunt and uncle's, and I was flipping through TV, and I found something on TV that was obviously a horror movie that had been put on TV. And all I remember is lots of mannequins in it. So I always thought it was House of Wax. But I looked at a couple of the stills in Tourist Trap, and there's mannequins in that too. And now I'm starting to wonder if that was the one I saw. So I'm actually very interested in that. So we're looking at a classic, The Wicker Man, also. Not the Nicolas Cage, oh my God, the bees.
Did we mention we're like going with 1970s? That's the whole
I think that Tom just said that, 1970s. Yeah, 1970s horror. So, The Wicker Man. I put on there Suspiria, just because, not the remake, but the original, because that is just the one that I hear, and I'm going to mess up his name, and I've only had one drink, Tom.
Dario Argento.
Right, okay.
Dario Argento.
He's one of those directors that people either swear by, or they say, I can't stand him. and I've never seen any of his films. So,
His daughter is super.
what's that?
His daughter is really hot.
Okay, well, moving on. Chuck has offered up The Omen as well, so we put The Omen on there. And I believe there was also, I did The House That Dripped Blood. And it's just one of those ridiculous titles, but then you look at it and it's got Christopher Lee, Tom, I'm going to say it wrong again, Peter Cushing, with a screenplay written by Robert Bloch. So that right there intrigues me, The House That Dripped Blood. And it's also, I guess, it's an anthology film. So we're going to go, as always, to the Wheel of Fate. Last time, the Wheel of Fate actually played us a pretty good hand with Ready or Not. So we'll see how it does for us this time. All right, so we're back for the Saturday Night Horror Movie Club. We're going with the 70s theme this time. The Wheel of Fate has chosen us The Tourist Trap. So, I don't think I've ever seen this movie. This may or may not be the movie where I saw a couple scenes on TV back when I was like 10. I'm not sure. I'll be really interested. There's one key scene that I remember that I'll be really interested. But we're going to do something new where we're going to give our, idea of what the movie's going to be like. So I'll start. So I recently saw, it was actually after we watched Robert and the Toy Maker, and I thought to myself, all right, nobody died during this movie, so I decided to watch 31 after you guys left by Rob Zombie. That pretty much covered. Everyone died in that movie. But I feel like 31 was like Rob Zombie trying to channel something like this. I mean, we got tourists stopping by. I mean, it's also a pretty classic trope. Tourists stopping by an out of the way, attraction. I'm expecting really eerie, like ambiance and surreal. It'll be interesting to see what the gore level is. I think we've become inundated with gore. I really think so. Like I rewatched, which we'll have to talk about this for Into the Abyss. I rewatched Friday the 13th Part 6 the other day, and I was surprised how little gore it actually had compared to today's standards. So it's funny, I think, how we get desensitized. That's what I think. Surreal atmosphere, probably finding a crazy, sideshow where the guy's nuts. Whether or not there's going to be anything more to the plot, I don't know. So, Chuck, what are your anticipations for this movie?
My predictions, I think it's going to fall somewhere between Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Psycho.
Okay. Tom?
It's 1970s. One thing I noticed on those types of horror movies, they don't need to have sense or an explanation at the end. Sometimes they just throw it right at you and say, here, accept it. That's what we're going to go with.
So do you want me to try to get all hoity-toity intellectual on you?
Do you want me to go drunk done on you?
Sure. We know we have two loyal fans that will love that. This doesn't involve masturbation either, so we're all right. So it's interesting that you say that, because there's been a lot of study done on horror movies before Vietnam than horror movies after Vietnam. The classic example, and I'm gonna have to. We'll have to do another theme night. We'll have to do a 40s and 50s theme night too. There's a classic one called. It's either called Cat People, or I don't think it's called Cat Woman. It may be called The Cat, but it's about this woman who turns into a werecat, and she's like, her and some other girl are vying for a man. And there's this one, it's a classic scene where the girl is running through the dark, and we know she's getting stalked by the werecat, but we never see her. But we feel instantly relieved when she steps into the light of a street light, because in the light, she's safe. And then she makes it to the bus, and that is your classic, if you just survive till morning, everything. Well, then Chainsaw Massacre comes along after Vietnam War, and Vietnam War kind of destroyed the idea of rules and order. And here you got Vietnam. Here you've got Chainsaw Massacre, where everyone's dying during the day. The cops are no help. So it's interesting you mentioned that. Meanwhile, Ernie's like, Daddy, can you get this guy to stop talking?
Sorry, this is Henry VIII, by the way.
Oh, that's Henry, not Ernie. Asking. Okay. All right, so let's start with Tourist Trap, and it's about an hour and 25 minutes. So I guess I've got my screen maximized, so I can't see any time. I do have my phone here. Do we want to stop around roughly 20 minutes, 30 minutes in?
Yeah, we'll do it 30 minutes in.
Okay, so we'll come back.
This.
What's that?
Irwin Yablans produces this, I guess.
Okay.
And wasn't he on the Halloween franchise?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
All right, so we'll be back in 30 minutes with our initial thoughts on Tourist Trap. Okay, here we are at roughly the 25-minute mark of Tourist Trap, starring, what's her name again?
Chuck Connors, Tanya Roberts.
Oh, Tanya Roberts. I was going to do Chuck Connors. Chuck Connors, Tanya Roberts. So what are you guys' thoughts so far? Chuck, why don't you go first?
I'm having fun with it. It feels very retro. I mean, even more than the 70s, I think it has a throwback feel to an even earlier era than that. It feels like an old-fashioned spooky film, even compared to the late 70s.
Okay.
I thought it was going to go more towards the late 70s, early 80s slasher era, but I think it feels older than that.
At least now it does, yeah. Tom, what do you got?
Yeah.
Well, so far I like it. There are a few things in there. I don't know if it was put in on purpose or not. First, Chuck Connors, the stranger, he was talking about how he doesn't get a lot more tourists anymore because the highway came in. That actually kind of is a trope. I'm going to go a little history on this one. The Interstate Highway Act, which was passed in the 1950s, where interstates were created really to move military equipment, but in that case, you did see a lot of towns and villages lose a lot of everything because they no longer had the traffic they used to have. So like here in New York State, you now have I-81, I-88 instead of people going on Route 17. So that's interesting. I think Psycho touched upon that, how he doesn't get a lot of business because of the new highway. And one thing that was in when he took him into that museum, did anyone notice that flag with the 1 star on it?
You pointed it out, but I didn't know the significance.
That is usually people who have a family member who's serving, especially in a foreign conflict. They have a flag out there with a star on it. Sometimes they have more than one family member. They'll have multiple stars. So I don't know if that's going to figure in or not. I know maybe it's interesting. I kind of like how, and we said before, okay, that girl who's dressed completely is going to be the virginal final girl sort of thing. This is 1979. These old tropes didn't exist. They were the ones who made it. Right,
exactly. Yes, we're wondering if that's going to. So yeah, I like it so far, and I'm happy to say we talked about this before that I have memories of coming across the movie on TV, where this one scene where someone gets impaled by a pipe, and the blood trickles out of the end of the pipe. And I had no context for the movie. I just have that image. I am happy to say that I think this is the movie. Finally, after all these years. It's funny when you mention the tropes, because Chuck Connors so far he's not being the spooky, like, he's maybe quirky. Maybe he isn't the guy who's doing this all. When he talks about his brother, that makes me, there's the old gothic trope of, I take my crazy sibling and lock him in the attic or something like that. Yep. So, who knows? Maybe it's not him. Maybe his brother didn't really go to the city. Maybe his brother's the one doing the killing. But the nice thing about Chuck Connors so far is he's very affable, very polite. We, of course, automatically distrust this. But like I was telling you guys earlier, I was watching the first Friday the 13th a couple days ago, and you had your town crazy who's like, That place has got a death curse. We don't have that so far, but yet, and it's funny you said this, Tom. This is a set movie in '79, so it helped establish the cliches. But because this is a very postmodern take, because all of us have watched 20 years or more of horror movies, doesn't matter how nice Chuck Connors is, none of us trust him already. Okay, so that'll be interesting. Also, too, as you mentioned, I'm gonna need an explanation for why things are flying around. At first, I thought they were trying to imply that this was all like he had rigged the whole house and it was remote control. But that one scene with the scarf and it choked the girl, like you said, are they just going to not bother explaining that? Or does he have some sort of TK or something, you know?
Yep.
I will say that the creepy factor is pretty good because of those mannequins.
Yes. And
how he set it up. I mean, how many times have you watched? I mean, you don't see these much anymore in stores, but remember back in the day of, I'm trying to think of a few of them, Burt's, or other department stores that had those lifelike mannequins, and they're pretty darn creepy.
Well, and that's the nice thing about this movie is taking advantage of something that we already find creepy. Like there's that great Twilight Zone episode, and I'm at a loss for the title now. It may be like the 7th floor or something like that.
I was thinking the same thing, yeah, with the shop.
The shop where all the mannequins come to life, and yeah. So, all right. So that's
because you've never heard of Burt's, have you?
I have actually.
Oh yeah.
But you didn't.
I've heard of it. I've never been to one, but I've heard of it. Yes.
All right. So
that would be creepy department store.
Yeah.
No, you know what the creepiest department store is? There's a used furniture store out in Owego that's in an old high school. Really creepy. Anyway,
that's where you're
middle school.
Oh.
Yeah, old middle school is really creepy. All right, so we will come back in roughly about halfway through and tell you how we think things have developed so far. All right, so here we are, halfway through Tourist Trap with Chuck Connors, and who was the other one, Tom?
Oh, Tanya Roberts, but she's not the final girl.
Final girl, okay.
Sorry, I don't know who the final.
So, Tom, what are your thoughts so far?
I really like it. It's up in the air about interpretation. I think that's the thing for 70s horror movies.
There, yeah.
Like, right now I'm looking at the whole concept of maybe he and his brother served, and Kevin, you brought this up earlier about the Vietnam War. Maybe they both served in the war. The whole issue of his brother and his wife. The whole issue about the Interstate Highway Act taken away from the state routes. I mean, there's a lot to cover on this one. Maybe we'll do it at the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it's really creepy, I think. I think it's creepy.
Chuck, what do you think?
Well, I'm agreeing with one thing I noticed here. I discovered, we're watching it on Amazon Prime Video, and there's the trivia, and it actually says here, the scariest PG movie ever made. We're now 2/3 of the way through it. It's PG. Now, keep in mind, this is before Gremlins, so PG back then was different.
Yes.
Because Gremlins was PG as well. Gremlins is one of the movies that made them go from having PG to PG-13.
Right. Yeah, there was a shift there somewheres where a lot more was covered in PG. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I think it was like Gremlins were the movies that pushed it over the edge, and they ended up creating PG-13 as a stopgap between PG and R.
Yep.
Joe, you saw Gremlins in the movie theater.
So, my thoughts, first of all, we were just joking, I think we do have to wait to the end of the movie to unpack this. I just feel like this thing is like a treasure trove of tropes and images. Like, if I was teaching this in a cinema class, I'd be having a field day at this point. I really like the fact, so we're really split right now. At first, we were thinking it was Chuck Connors, split personality. 1 minute he's himself, the next minute he's his brother. What we've already kind of seen here, unless that they totally screw the pooch by the end of the movie, we've had two threatening figures in two different places at once. So, like, how can...
it's still open. We'll still have to see where it goes.
Right, exactly.
We'll have to see what they end up pulling in there. And they could still pull the split personality, and it may not be completely believable, but it's open there.
Right, exactly.
There is a callback to, the waxwork with Vincent Price, and then the waxwork of the 2000s.
Yes, and
absolutely, they're going. I think there's a definite callback to the Vincent Price Wax Museum movie.
And I'm happy they did at least mention the fact that the one guy's got psychic powers. That he started talking about his power and using it. At least we explained that. So yeah, I think we want to save a lot of this, because especially the images, which makes it in its own way a very classic movie, because we talked about earlier about, and I'm going to do some research here while we watch it. I can't remember if it's called Werecat or Cat People or whatever, but that whole idea of, like, we just had the striking image of the virginal young girl running in the woods with the white dress, and so there's a lot there. You guys, any other final thoughts? Sorry, Chuck.
I'm going to say, called it. I called it was halfway between Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Psycho, and there's a definite illusion there with the face for Leatherface, and then for Psycho having the remote instead of a hotel, remote tourist trap. And you were mentioning Freddy Krueger as well as kind of a personality influence.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's there.
Because Mike Myers and Leatherface don't have a personality, and when he's torturing them there in the basement, he's making jokes, he's drinking whiskey, he's it's not really Freddy Krueger, but just that idea that you got the combination of the mask, you have the combination of the psychosis, but there's a personality there. So yeah, Tom, any further thoughts before we go on?
I think, for the 1970s, they always leave it up to your imagination, and that's actually I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if they interviewed the directors later on, saying, "Did you mean this? You mean that?" I honestly think what makes 1970s horror movies very good is saying, "All right, you, the audience, you need to decide what this means."
Okay.
I have chips in my mouth. Sorry. All right. So we'll be back toward the end of the movie. Here we are. There's Chuck. That close up of Chuck is just about as surreal as the end of this movie. So we have reached the end. There he is, the end of Tourist Trap. Tom, what are your final thoughts? There's a lot to unpack here. Not to mention the WTF, what's happening here in the end. Tom, why don't you begin?
Well, I think they stuck with the whole 1970s horror movie of you need to interpret what's going on. Like, you got some information at the end, but there's probably so much more that you could, it's kind of up to the viewer to decide what's going on. We talked about before the whole flag with the 2 stars. I think that's supposed to represent Chuck Connors and his brother serving in Vietnam, and the whole issue of the Interstate Highway Act changing, changing small towns and villages were losing business as compared to what the interstates brought. It was quite a trip, I'd say.
Yeah.
There was queerness to it. There was scenes of Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre in it. And I liked it. I liked it. This is something that I saw bits and pieces of back when I was much younger.
Yeah. I'm really happy. I'm not going to go into my analysis yet, but I have checked a box off in my wish fulfillment. You know, I was always a sci-fi fantasy guy. Well, not even really fantasy. I was a sci-fi guy for the longest time until Stephen King converted me. But I always had the hazy memory of watching a horror movie on TV by accident at my uncle's house and flipping through and seeing these images. And the images I remembered was a guy getting impaled, someone getting impaled by a pipe and blood leaking out the end of the pipe. And then there's that weird scene in the end when, was the guy's name Woody? When Woody comes to save the girl and Chuck Connors is like, "You're a mannequin," and he starts taking the guy apart as he's alive. And he's suddenly, like, and I remember being really freaked out about that as a kid, and I just didn't know the name of the movie. And now I feel like I've checked a box off my wish list.
I know. You found it.
Yay. Chuck, what are your thoughts about the movie here at the end?
I love it. It's very retro, and I'll say it before, it doesn't even feel like a 70s horror. All the tropes are there, but it has a lot of feeling of even older school than that. It feels almost more 60s. It feels very Hitchcockian at times. So, but it was a lot of fun. It's a very approachable horror film. It's one where a lot of people who aren't even big on horror can probably even watch this one.
Right.
It says here, I was reading on the stats about it. It's technically rated PG. It would have definitely been a PG-13 if PG-13 existed.
Yep.
It was pushing that boundary as well, but it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. So there was a. So let's talk about, first of all, the images in this movie. I really felt like if I were teaching this to a film class, I would have a field day. Like, I don't. Again, you mention these things, and you never know if the directors meant it. If it's just us. Like, I'm telling my kids all the time in English, you know, when we're interpreting a story or something like that, they're always like, "Mr. Lucia, do you think the author really meant to do that?" And I'll always be like, "Well, I don't know if they consciously meant to do it, but it's there, so we should talk about it." I think it's interesting that early in the movie, now obviously we find out that Woody survives and things like that, but early in the movie you had a very stereotypical scenario where the one guy's killed, the other guy has disappeared, and you've got nothing but females all menaced. You know, that's a pretty classic Gothic trope. Tom, did you pick up on any other images that, I mean, I've got a ton I can just ramble on, but we don't need to hear my voice the entire time. Did you, like, pick up any images that you thought that were really striking?
Well, the whole concept that Chuck Connor's character had a brother, and spoiler alert, that a big thing that he was about was how his brother had an affair with his wife, and that which kind of started the whole killing spree. But there's more, actually, and a few things as well, like in terms of the whole psycho situation, how the normal Chuck Connor's character had a limp, but his alter ego did not have a limp.
I didn't pick that up. You're right.
So it's up in the air if that's intentional or not. I should point out in the 1970s, they were cranking out some movies at that time. It wasn't until the original Friday the 13th came out in 1980 they started really cranking them out. And probably didn't really put too much into symbolism as well. So it's up in the air. I mean, if you could talk to the director, the producer, saying what you were looking for, what were you trying to do, I mean, most of the time they'll probably say, honestly, we're just trying to make some money. But I think there were a few things they threw out there that it's up to the audience's interpretation. And I think that works pretty well.
Okay. Chuck, what about you image-wise? Any images that are really striking to you?
Yeah, there was one, I hate to call it subtle, but it wasn't exactly subtle, but they brought it out in a variety of subtle ways, and that was the sexual tension that was there with the character. Obviously, as Tom said, spoiler alert, it had to do with his wife being gone, and then he starts to notice that most of the mannequins are female, actually, or maybe even all of them. But all young females there. And then some of the ways that they were manipulated by the puppet master, it just gets you, it puts you in that sense of the tone of the film and the tone of what's in his head. There was a lot of that leading up to the reveal, and I think we could all sense what was going on here in their head before they even said what the plot was. So I think they did a good job of bringing that into the film throughout the whole length of the film.
Yeah. I love the image of the virginal girl in white running through the woods. It's dark out, and she's in a white dress. Like, so she was earmarked from the very beginning. You know, she was the only one that had white on, and even though she did go skinny dipping, she was the only one who objected to going skinny dipping. Okay, so here's what we got to talk about here at the. What the heck happened at the end? Tom, you were taking a break when I was talking about this Chuck off camera. I said, this is the epitome of what Tom was talking about, the 1970s surreal ending where we're not even going to bother trying to explain this logically, just weird. Like, what happened at the end?
I think the final girl lost her own, her own mind.
So those other characters never existed?
No, well, it's up in the air. Maybe they did. Maybe she took her mannequin friends for a ride because she lost her mind after that. We'll leave it up to the audience to interpret.
It was a great shot. It was a great shot there again.
It was. Did they, when the guy asked him, what about the other girls? And Chuck Connor's character goes, what other girls? I'm like, wait, what? Is this a dream? Chuck, what are you thinking?
I think they really did exist. But yeah, I think they went from a movie that was understandable for the first 98%, and then the last 2%, like you said, let's go full blown weird. It doesn't have to make sense at the end, and they went there, and it's almost comical. It was creepy. They had a good vibe, but yeah, it's kind of comical in the way that it just all blew up on our faces.
And I will tell you this though, like, that's still a striking scene to me, where you think that the guy is there to save her. He's there to save her, and Chuck Connors was like, no, takes his arm off, and the guy looks so bewildered when he just rips his arm off, and it's a mannequin arm. That's just the whole. Now, Chuck, you will, when we do Into the Abyss, we'll have to talk about this because I think that Phantasm has a similar ending, but better. Like, you know, Tom, you've seen the first Phantasm.
Yeah.
At the very end of Phantasm.
Yeah, if people haven't seen that, it's my homework time. I was told I have to watch Phantasm.
Yeah, because we're going to do a Phantasm. I just finished reading the authorized Phantasm Companion, which was really, really good. So, and I've got a special place in my heart for Phantasm too. But the ending of Phantasm is like this one. We're just sitting here going, "What the heck? That's weird. How can you explain that?" Where the ending of the first Phantasm does it, but you're not trying to figure it out. You're just like, wait, what happens next? And they're just like, nope, sorry, we're going to walk away and leave you. So yeah, I thought, are we going to rate this one or no?
I mean, it's up to what you like. Some people like to have closure on a movie. And in this case, I mean, to be honest, out of a 1 through 5 situation, I'd say I give this a 4.
Yeah.
In terms of really with your mind.
Yep. I don't know. What do you say, Chuck?
Yeah, I go to the 4. It's got some quirkiness. It's got, for a lot of movies, it's not going to scare you. A lot of the outdated tropes and stuff like that, we've seen it before. It loses some of that, but it's still fun to watch this movie. But there are also some really well done creeps and scares.
Yep.
But I think the ending's going to be the divisive thing that's here. Some people are going to hate that ending. Some people are just going to. I laughed at it. It's both creepy. So I'm laughing because it's a nervous thing, but also because it's kind of hysterical in the way that it's just written. We don't care. let's just be weird.
Zero,
But I enjoyed it. It was a fun movie, so I give it 4 out of 5.
0 F's were given in the writing of this ending. We don't care.
Oh, yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
care. So yeah, I would definitely.
25 letters in this alphabet. 25 letters in this alphabet. We jump from E to G. There's
Now, Tom, you said this is currently free on Tubi, right?
Yes, it is. On Tubi, you just have to deal with the ads.
Awesome, yeah. So, like, don't even go see it. Highly recommended. It is on Amazon Prime for rental, but it's also free on Tubi. So, go check out Tourist Trap with Chuck Connors.
I'll also add this. We saw this on Amazon Prime. There's also the Riff Tracks version. So if you're looking for some laughs, I haven't heard that commentary, but if you're a big fan of like Mystery Science Theater 3000, you can see the film and get some laughs.
Yeah. So here we are from Into the Abyss, Saturday Night Horror Mover Club.
Flying the curve, social distance. Let's get through this.
All right.
Yep.